welcome to the Steps to Happiness show on Soulivity TV. I'm your host, Teresa Greco, happiness coach, author, editor, writer, educator, and Reiki master. Are you ready to follow your joy and tap into your inner happiness? Then the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, my guests and I explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices that can help lead you back to the happiness within you. The happiness principle for today's show is navigating the human experience. Life is not always fair, nor is it always easy. We all know that to be true, where we can find ourselves saying, I didn't sign up for this, and feeling resentment and cynicism, despair. We live in a world that tells us there's a pill for every pain, a diversion for every moment of boredom, and a fix for every problem. But the truth is, there are times in our life that can feel like hell. As life throws us those hard balls, rather than letting them defeat us, it serves us better to say, I'm going to take this wound and grow from it by finding the strength inside in me to place one foot in front of the other and taking one step at a time. And if you're not sure what steps to take, that's when you may need to seek out a professional who can help you to know that you're not alone and support you during those difficult times. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the ways we can get through those tough patches in our lives by not drowning, but by surfing the waves instead. I'll see you after this short break.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Welcome back to the Steps to Happiness show. Let me introduce my guest. She's an entrepreneur, podcaster, influencer, and a strong advocate for mental health, women's rights, and living authentically. Katie Barnett, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for today.
Thank you. Now, Katie, if you can tell us a little bit about your story and how life got in the way and kind of derailed your dreams a little bit.
This is always fun. I'm like, where do I start? I was in college and we'll start there. I was in college back in the early 2000s and kind of lost. I always had this feeling that I just always knew I could do bigger things. So I did that thing where I kind of bounce in between majors. I bounced in between colleges a little bit, wound up getting a master's in education and a teaching credential, and really believed that at the end of the day, all I cared about was starting a family. I had my guy. And so shortly after, I worked for a little while and then wound up just becoming a mom and had my 3 little kids. I had started a small business that really kind of opened up my mind to entrepreneurship. It was really fun. It was exciting. It was well known within the community. It also took a lot of my time and a lot of my energy away from kids. And it was in 2017 that I started a network marketing business just because I wanted the products for free. But in that, I started growing pretty big. And, at the same time, we had just purchased a home that we had spent a lot of money on building it, the home of our dreams, and things got difficult. Yeah, we had 3 very small children, all under 5. Money was tight. I was succeeding in a business that kinda came out of nowhere, and that caused even more it can cause turmoil because it meant that I was growing in areas that maybe we weren't doing as a couple. And at the same time, my husband was experiencing a lot of kind of difficult things in it, and our marriage was struggling to say the least. And so it was in 2017, I think, that we separated, and I was raising 3 kids by myself and expecting for this separation to really it was more of a threat, if I'm being completely honest, like, "Come save us, let's make this better," and it didn't really work out that way. There were a lot of different horrible circumstances, including a large fire. My husband's in the fire industry, and one of our nearby towns burned down, and so it just kind of felt like I needed all the focus to be on us, and the focus his family lost a home in that, and he was working nonstop, and anyways, I fell into a very, very deep depression at the time. Anybody who's been depressed probably knows the feeling when you can kinda look back on your depression and see just how dire and desperate and awful it was. One of the really big standout things for me in that depression was, I mean, I had a 2-year-old who I still will watch videos back and be like, "Okay, I was present. I was there. I showed them love," and I need that sometimes because what I remember was just the pure desperation and desire to not exist, and, that's not to say that I didn't think about hurting myself, but I didn't want to be, period. And, but one of the big standouts of that time for me was the true belief that, knowing so many people who had just lost homes, knowing so many people who I had a friend who lost a son that fall to a horrible circumstance. And then later that year, my cousin lost her son, which was absolutely terrible for our whole family. Um, Still feeling as though somehow I was in a worse place than everybody. And that's like it feels very horrible to say those things out loud, knowing that that was not the case at all. But in those moments of depression, in those times of depression, um, I mean, that is a pretty big sign that you need more. And so, what has been even more enlightening for me was not coming out of that because it led to 3 years of difficulty. We all know the pandemic changed everybody's life. I think everybody experienced some level of depression and all of that, the isolation, the change of how your career was gonna work from now on, how you were gonna communicate with people, you even saw people. So there was a lot a lot of difficulty in those 3 years, and cut to last year, I was separated again and found myself in quite literally the exact same position, um, but probably even a more difficult position, honestly. And but with hope and with belief in myself and with knowledge that we were going to be okay, even without the understanding of why this is my life. I mean, there were a lot of times where I just was like, "I did not choose this. This is not what I wanted. This was not the
Mhm.
story I planned. This isn't supposed to be me. I come from this beautiful, happy home and families that stay together." And, so even with all of that, going through the same situation but with such a different mindset thanks to the hard work that I've put in since
Mhm.
2017, really. Um, it was just, it's been unbelievable. And it's been a learning experience. We're actually back in our home now. Um, and there's so much there, obviously, to talk
Mhm.
about.
Mhm.
But all in all, I think that when I talk about anybody stepping into, you know, becoming a contribution, stepping into their purpose in life, is coming from a place of feeling at one point that I really didn't have one, that I really didn't, I was not worth anything. And feeling as though life had happened to me. And
Mhm.
the work that you can do in those areas can change everything and prepare you for really anything that comes your way. And it doesn't mean that there aren't hard things. There are hard things all the time, but
Mhm.
yeah, really getting to improve your state, improve your story, and then have that strategy for how you're going to deal with really the difficulties or just the small things that trigger you throughout the day. I mean, that's one of the
Mhm.
one of the exercises that I think has been almost the most meaningful to me is learning my triggers and planning for how to manage those triggers and being able to recognize when I might be triggering other people. But yeah, so it's been that's been, there's been a few things. I've had some bumps in the road, absolutely, and they weren't bumps that I asked for. They weren't things that I wanted. They weren't things that I felt like I had really created even. But taking full responsibility for your life is not an easy thing, but it can absolutely
Mhm.
change everything.
Yes. Now, Katie, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of that with us because there's a lot there to unpack, let's say, but it is really this story that reflects the reality of what living life on earth is all about, that it is this roller coaster, this ocean of waves, there's these up and downs where things are going well, and then devastation happens, and then again we seem to come out of it, and then something else throws us for a loop. And that this is I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and part of that human experience is to learn and experience life as a human being, and that life on planet earth is all about this. But that takes you know having like a bird eye view from the top to say, okay, this is the human playground. Okay, and I'm going to swear here, shit can happen that doesn't feel good. And that there are times in our life that we don't know if we can pick ourselves off the floor and to continue on doing what we need to do for others around us. You were a mother, right? You had 3 children that how do we do that? And this is what this show is all about, is acknowledging that yes, this show is called Steps to Happiness, and we do talk a lot about the show. We talk about how do we live our happiest lives, but in doing that we have to acknowledge that life on earth is hard. It is hard, and that every day it can take us away from the love, peace, and happiness that we are. And that my belief of happiness is that it is our essential nature. It is the core of who we are. It is our original nature, but and with love and peace. But the world very slowly takes us away from that. And it takes us away moment by moment, day after day. And so I'm going to ask you now for the second part of our time together is, how do we remember the truth of who we are? How do we navigate this human experience from a higher level of consciousness? Like that bird's eye view to say, like, okay, yes, but I have what it takes inside of me to grow from this situation. I that we are never given anything that we can't handle, that we always have the tools and the gifts and strengths and wisdom inside of us to persevere, to be resilient through this situation, to get back up on that horse and keep going. And so let's talk about what some of those tools are that, you yourself have implemented in your own life, as you've just said, that to get you the place that you are today, and the people that you're helping to do the same. Let's talk about what those tools and steps are, please.
Yeah, it's so interesting because and I was actually doing a training this morning for a group and I kept saying, "Look, you guys, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple. It's not easy." Those are two very different things. And it takes practice. It takes practice to catch yourself in the negative self-talk. It takes practice to then figure out what you can say to yourself. And for the last 10 months, I've had 3 pieces of paper that at first I was a little bit embarrassed by it, but it sat at the end of my bed. It was taped on the wall. My kids' friends would come over and they would see these things, and it was all of my I am statements. And they weren't just statements of who
Mhm,
I am right now. They are who I plan to be, who I will be. And I know because of my habits, because of the practice that I've put in, because I've continuously shown myself that I will do the things that I say I set out to do, and that they all come from a place of wanting to provide value and goodness.
mhm, mhm.
I know those things to be true.
Yes, and I'm going to say they are already true, even though we're not seeing it, right? That the reality of who we will, not to interrupt you, but the reality of
Oh,
who we
please.
really are is there, but it's been hidden in plain sight from us. So we believe, even thank you so much for saying that, because I have a whole list of sticky notes with my affirmations. And I say that in exactly the same context, that I put it there for like my future self, but we are that already, right? To say that my all of my am statements as if I'm not there yet. But we are
Right.
there. We're just not seeing it within ourselves. We are embodying those I am statements now in this moment, although it's almost like we have our blinders on to it. We have, those veils or those masks or those cloaks that are covering our eyes from seeing the greatness of who we really are now, that we're not that we might feel like we're working towards it, but we really need to open our eyes to the fact that we are all of those things already. How do we get connected to that? Sorry to interrupt, but I just thought that, yes, I understand what you're saying, but we need to also remember that we are those I am statements now. It's not something we don't need to be working towards them. We need to embody them because we are that already.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And that was really the the purpose of putting those up there was to, I've talked recently about, look, you're not faking it till you make it. Like, let's change
Thank you.
this.
Hmm. Thank you.
You are in the process of becoming more, and you are those things. That's not faking
Mhm.
it. I talk all the time to women who say to me, "I know I have more value to give. I know I have a bigger purpose." And, it's not this big, beautiful thing that drops down in front of you. It's a decision that you make. Be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
So it's simple affirmations written down on a piece of paper somewhere that I'm going to be able to see them all the time. That's simple. It's not easy to write those things
No.
down. We come from a society that tells us that we can't think more of ourselves and
Mhm.
or we can't believe in the bigger pieces of ourselves, and it's so sad. It's so sad.
Mhm.
But the last 5 years for me have been stepping into all of those things and trying to bring as many people with me as humanly possible because that's where it gets so good. I know that there
Mhm.
are negative things happening out there on social media. Like, I hear about them,
Mhm.
but I'm not seeing them. I'm not experiencing them. And it's
Yeah.
because what we think about, we bring about. We attract what we do. and who we are. And I'm not saying that things haven't happened, but again, because of the work that I do, because of, you know, the affirmations that I am, um, I handle those things differently. So you talk about the roller coaster, and it can be something as huge as losing somebody that you love without any expectation of anything like that happening, or it might be just some little thing. I'm out of coffee
Mm-hmm.
this morning. And that sounds awful to be comparing those things, but it's true. We can be sent into kinda like a, "Oh, and this is gonna ruin everything," kinda thing with just a bad interaction with our partner in the morning, or,
Mm-hmm.
something so small. And so, yeah, there's a roller coaster, but we have to choose to be the thermostat.
Mm-hmm.
We have to choose to set the temperature of our day, of our lives, of the energy around us.
Mm-hmm.
And that means not going on that roller coaster ride. And that does not mean that we don't get to feel the hard, horrible feelings that are going to come our way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also knowing that there's going to be good again.
Mm-hmm. And the
And
hope, holding on to that hope for that, right? That I think that was part of when you shared your story. You said that there was this inner knowing inside of you, this little voice, right? That was like, it's going to get better, that it can't just stay the way it is, that and it does. It's like there are these seasons in our life where we are meant to experience whatever it is that we're going through, for whatever lessons and learning we're supposed to take away from that. And it's always just learning more about ourselves. What can we handle? How low can we go before we hit that bottom, and then we've got to get back up from that. It's all learning more about ourselves that I believe are part, like, I mean, I talk about purpose in a couple different ways, but one of the ways I talk about it is just our purpose is just to learn more about ourselves, and that it's not about seeking one true purpose that we're supposed to be doing. But what about if our purpose was just, number one, to live authentically? I think that's a point that we need to get to, because many of us are wearing masks and not living our authentic self, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I mean, and then even that is the learning process, that even for me, that's part of my story. I was living my life according to everybody else, and then learning that I was doing that. And then now, how do I move forward from a place of authenticity in everything that I do? But that's all part of me learning more and more about who I am, and my gifts and my strengths. And it's like, if we could always look at life from that angle, to say, okay, how is this showing me more about who I am? And that coffee example that you gave is like, those people are at the tipping point. They're there, that the tiniest little thing is, it's a whole stack of stuff. And now you put that little paper clip on the top of like your to-do list, and it's just like boom, right? So if just you're not having any coffee is triggering that, like, okay, we need to really start to like peel back
go
layers.
back to the drawing
'Cause
board.
yes, because that shouldn't be happening. Somebody steals your parking spot at the mall, and then it's like pure rage. I have seen people fist fighting outside. I'm like, guys, like, you guys must be on a serious limit if this is what's happening now over a parking spot, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I guess we could talk about that in a whole nother respect, but Katie, if you could share more then about what are your daily little things that you do to keep you on track, because I'm with you that it takes practice and consistency, and I have to do it every day, because old habits, the programming, the conditioning, the paradigms, they're so unconscious and built within us that they come out, and I have to try to catch them over and over and over again. And so, if you maybe, I know we only have a couple minutes left, but what are some of the ways that we can do that?
I love it you say this. Like the other day, I came across something and it talked about how much easier it is to be negative, and it really is. And so I work so hard on just in the morning, you, if you can take those first few minutes of the morning to set your intention, to be thankful for whatever small moments occurred the day before, small moments can be so huge. And if you have children, you know this because you can take them on the biggest trip in the world. And what they remember is my youngest son. What he remembers more than anything, he had the stomach flu. I pulled him into my room, made a bed on the floor, and we watched Elf until like 4 o'clock in the morning while he like puked every 4 minutes. And that's like the best night of his life. Like, forget the Great Wolf
You
Lodge,
know,
forget Disneyland, forget
no,
all these other
no,
things.
that's Disney World for my kids, and we're at Disney World $10,000 later, and they're like, I don't even want to be here. I just want to be at the pool. I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah, yeah, kids will teach you this very, very, very quickly, yeah. And so, I'm thinking about all of this, and I'm like, here I am, and I'm training on this. I have a podcast. It's all I talk about on Instagram and in my socials and blog, and and I'm walking into the bathroom, and in my head, it just goes, "You're fat. You haven't been." And it's just like these thoughts just like pop in, and here's the thing: I recognize them, but believe that a lot of us live through those thoughts without recognizing
Mhm,
them. And we're listening to those thoughts. You
mhm,
failed today. You didn't get this done. You said you were going to do that. Look at the house. And and so
mhm,
the practice, the intention, setting it in the morning, setting it at night when your consciousness is it's in that like kind of
mhm,
dream state, but it's when it's going to have the most effect on you. And when you can
mhm,
really start to affect your brain, how you think, how you support yourself. And so for me, in that moment, I was able to go, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself right now?"
mhm,
And it's
mhm,
not easy, but it's simple to look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror. This sounds silly, but give yourself the love that you deserve. Tell yourself
mhm,
the truths about you. And and again, a lot of this seems so silly, but it will change things. So
mhm,
my day to day, wake up, try it's one of those things that just sounds so it's just sounds ridiculous, the gratitude journals, they're there for a reason. You're going to hear about them from everybody out there, right? And it can be hard because it's easier to be negative. It's easier to tell
mhm,
yourself all the things that you did wrong than it is to give yourself kudos for the things that you've done right. But you start to do
mhm,
that and you're going to start to see the beauty in life much more. And then probably one of the biggest things that for me is determining how I'm going to provide value today. And that can be something small. But listen, if you are in a bad place, I can promise
mhm,
you that building somebody up, supporting someone, providing value, having empathy for someone, you cannot feel like a bad person. You cannot feel negative about things when you are providing good for somebody else.
mhm.
And
And I'm
I
going to
highly
interject
suggest,
here. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm going to interject there just because as mothers, we or caregivers, we often don't recognize that providing that small value, as you said, is making a lunch for someone, is throwing the load of laundry in and having clean clothes for them to wear next week. It is passing the vacuum. It is like we don't even recognize that, like even that we think, oh, it's such a chore, and oh, look, everyone takes advantage of me, and oh, I have so much to do. No, but we are providing value in other people's lives that we don't even recognize as doing that. That it is such a nice thing for me to do for the people in my home when I make a dinner for them, when I go grocery shopping, when they don't have to worry about those things because I'm doing it for them, right? And that we undervalue all of the things that we do, that we think, oh wow, well, if we're not building a school in Africa, we've really done nothing. we haven't we haven't provided value to people in our life. It's like, no, it starts with the people closest to us every day. And you're a mom, I'm a mom, and for all the moms that might be watching, is that I want you to recognize that you're not a slave to your family, you are actually a saint. And then that every moment that you're doing and helping, and helping your family and helping your kids and helping your parents, I mean, it's on and on, how many beautiful and wonderful things that we add value to people's life all day long without
Yes, yes.
realizing it.
And I also want to be very clear that this is not me saying that you should go and pour from your empty cup out into people.
Mhm.
Um, because we're doing all day, every day. And
Mhm.
not just moms, everybody. If you're in a 9 to 5, like whatever it is, like we are constantly doing this. So it's not like, have boundaries. Do not let people suck your positive energy.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and that's again a whole other podcast talking on boundaries. but but yes, I completely
Mhm.
agree. And one of my favorite things to do, and this was just something that I actually didn't get this. I didn't even steal this from anybody. Um, a lot of times, because I would always feel like I had to write a list of what I needed to do the next day, because I have wild ADHD. And I feel like it's a superpower,
Mhm.
but it can also keep me spinning late into the evenings. And so people would say, write a list down of what you're going to do the next day. And it would stress me out because my brain wouldn't allow me to
Mhm.
focus on the things that I needed to remember. And then I'd get overwhelmed. And so what I started doing at the end of the day is writing down the things that I did accomplish, big and
Mhm.
small. Got the dishwasher emptied.
Yeah.
I got, you know, one kid's laundry done. I got the milk for the groceries. I got all of these things
Mhm.
done. And it's a different kind of gratitude. But what you're doing is you're recognizing what you did do for the day. You had a conversation with this person. Yeah.
Mhm.
And, and in doing that, you start to release some of that. Um, you release the tension, and then you get to set your intention for the next day. And
Mhm.
that's a big one. I think that one's Brendan Burchard. I'm not going to pretend like I made that one up, but um, we got to give ourselves more of a break. We have to practice that self gratitude. We have to practice
Mhm.
recognizing the negative thoughts when they come in. And then, just like you said, you can start to experience life with a knowledge of that hope. And
Mhm.
it was very strange. Like as I've mentioned, I was in literally the same situation with such a different outlook only 3 years later. And it was a really wild thing for me, knowing
Mhm.
that I could be so depressed that I can't get up and make my kids breakfast, but I have this knowledge that life is working for me and that this experience is
Mhm.
giving me something. And
Mhm. Thank
it
you.
takes
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you. So just to before I ask you how people can connect with you, but just to leave people with the end of our kind of chat, is that life is not happening to us, but is happening for us. And I just thought your story went so full circle there, that you said, I felt like, and you had said it twice in the first part, I felt like life was happening to me. And now, just to kind of recap, you're like, that life happening for me. And I think if we can exactly have that shift in perspective and that learning and that experience on earth as it's all happening for you, and that the people around you are there as part of this, let's say, this earthly plane, but this play that we're in on earth, to provide those experiences for us. So those people that are those jerks in those situations, and it could be our partners, are there as our greatest teachers if we look at, how they're behaving and what they're actually doing for our learning and what we're supposed to see from that. So Katie, I have enjoyed our conversation immensely, and I we could go on and on, but unfortunately our time together is all done. How can people connect with you after the show?
Well, I'm pretty much everywhere. No, you can go to levelafternext.org, and that will connect you to pretty much everything. I'm on Instagram. It's at KT Ann with an E, Barnett, Katie Ann Barnett. And I would love to connect. I do have a podcast. It's called Level After Next with Katie Barnett. And I would yeah, I love the connection. Message me. I'm always there for a good conversation. And Teresa, this has been so amazing. I've been looking forward to this for so long. It was such an honor to get to speak with you, and I love everything that you are putting out into this realm with me. And I just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing the ways that we can overcome those hurdles in our lives with love, compassion, grace, and hope. I'd like to leave you with a thought for the day. Life happens, and it can cause us to trip and fall. Give yourself permission to feel the unpleasant emotions, such as the pain, heartache, grief, and anger the situation is offering you through the experience. The important thing to remember, however, is that we don't have to unpack our bags and stay in those emotions longer than necessary. In those moments of challenge, when it feels like we're standing in the ashes of our crumbled life, opportunity lies in the question, what will I create with the rest of my life? And every moment is the opportunity to start again, taking everything we've learned from the situation and using it as a building block from which we can rebuild our lives. We can decide that throwing in the towel on ourselves is never an option. Connecting with our spiritual self in those times can help us remember that within us is a light that can dispel any darkness and an energy that can create something from nothing. This part of ourselves is always whole, healed, and complete. And by staying connected to that place within ourselves, we can ride the waves of life with forgiveness, peace, and love. Thank you for joining me on the show today, and I look forward to being with you again next week.
Connect with Teresa Greco after the show for coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements. You can visit her website at teresagreco.ca or by email at stepstotruehappiness@gmail.com or follow her on Instagram at TeresaGreco_Steps to Happiness or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco.